I dreamed of a hillbilly heaven. We turned this song down when it was first submitted to us. It was submitted by the writers, Eddie Dean and Hal Southern. And at that time, they had about 5 records of it. Eddie recorded it and Hal recorded it. The Frontiersman, I believe. Anita Carter did it a few months later. Altogether about 5 or 6 records of it. And I always thought about it. And some 5 years later, Eddie Dean mentioned it to me again. Why don't you do that song? Major label in that. So, about that time, we were making an album called The Lincoln Hymns, which didn't sell too well. That was in the early 60s when everybody was getting ready for the 100th anniversary of the Civil War. I don't think anything came off too well. So I asked Lee Gillette if we could slip a single record in on the album session. And he said, well, it would have to be from left field because country music is not selling too well at the moment. That is ballads. So I said, well, it's the Hillbilly Heaven thing that we talked about some 5 years ago. He said, yeah, Eddie Dean mentioned that to me the other day. So we did it, and it was the kind of a background that we needed for it. Because Ralph Carmichael had arranged and was conducting the orchestra. They had about 16 voices. It was a big sound. So we recorded it on that Lincoln Hymns album session, one of the sessions. And I think the Lincoln Hymns sold less than any album I ever made. But Hillbilly Heaven, I suppose, paid for the session and more. But we did it some 5 years after it was recorded by Eddie and Hal and the rest. And we considered, you look back on these things, we didn't care much for the word hillbilly. And Hal and Eddie said I could change it any way I wished. And we kicked it around, Cowboy Heaven or just Heaven. So we finally decided to leave it Hillbilly Heaven because of the alliteration. And nothing else quite seemed to fit. And they did give me permission, and I did change quite a few of the lyrics. And Hal and Eddie said, well, you deserve a third of the song. You changed it that much, so that's just on my version, not the copyright, of course. And, well, I took it. I dreamed I was there in hillbilly heaven. Oh, what a beautiful sight. Last night I dreamed I went to hillbilly heaven. And you know who greeted me at the gate? The old cowboy philosopher himself, Will Rogers. He said to me, Tex, that the big boss of the riders up here has asked me to kind of show you around. Right over yonder's a couple of your old compadres. My, was I glad to see them. Carson Robinson and the Mississippi Blue yodeler, Jimmy Rogers. I dreamed I was there in hillbilly heaven. Oh, what a beautiful sight. He introduced me to Wiley Post, and he showed me the Hall of Fame with all the gold guitars and fiddles hanging on the wall. Then he said, Tex, step over this way. There are 2 more of your friends I know you'll want to see. Yes, they're waiting for you. And there they were, standing side by side and smiling at me. Hank Williams and Johnny Horton. I met all the stars in hillbilly heaven. Oh, what a star-studded night. Then I asked him who else he expected within the next, say, 100 years. He handed me a large book covered with stardust. Will called it the Big Tally Book. In it were many names, and each name was branded in pure gold. I began to read some of them as I turned the pages. Red Foley, Ernest Tubb, Gene Autry, Roy Acuff, Eddie Arnold, Tennessee Ernie, Eddie Dean, Andy Griffith, Roy Rogers, Tex Ritter. Tex Ritter? Oh, well, that's when I woke up. And I'm sorry I did, because I dreamed I was there in hillbilly heaven. Oh,